everyone, and welcome back to season 3 of Commerce Meets Law. Our podcast, we talk about various commercial topics and how they interact with the legal profession. Today's episode is probably a conversation that I've wanted to have since this podcast began nearly 3.5 years ago now. So I am so glad. I'm probably beyond glad that we could finally make this happen. And it is with none other than Harri Davies. Having started his career as a solicitor at Osborne Clarke, Harri pivoted to working with aspiring solicitors for 7 years, which is where I had the incredible pleasure of meeting Harri for the first time. And at AS, Harri led strategic growth across partnerships, product, and operations with direct ownership of revenue and commercial strategy. Since his move from AS, Harri now works with EdTech founders to drive product adoption, strengthen partnerships, and scale revenue sustainably. In this episode, we firstly discuss Harri's journey from growing up in a small town in Wales to qualifying as a solicitor at a major city law firm. We also then discuss why he decided to leave private practice to join AS in 2018, his pivot from AS to EdTech last year, and his roles at Sunny Future and Immovum and how they differ between these two organizations, as well as his goals for the future and, importantly, his realistic advice for professionals who wish to change career paths but feel that they may not have the financial means or the opportunities to do so right now. Just a quick request before we get into the conversation. I would really appreciate if you could kindly give the podcast a follow and a rating on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to these episodes, as it really helps Commerce Meets Law reach more listeners. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy this second in-person episode, and I'll see you right at the end.
Hi, Harri, and welcome to Commerce Meets Law. I feel like I've been waiting to say that for such a long time, so very excited to have you on the podcast. Before we get started, we always have an icebreaker, which is, in your opinion, what is your superpower?
Great to be here, Shreya, and well done on over 100 episodes, really impressive stuff, and glad I could finally join you. Superpower. I think often your friends know you better than you know yourself, and I remember a few years ago, when I was with Aspiring Sisters, which is where I met you, Chris White, he found a page for me to do a chimp management course in Sheffield.
Yeah.
And part of the preparation for that program, the psychiatrist Steve Peters, who's worked with Stephen Gerrard, Ronnie Sullivan, amazing athletes, was that you would consult a friend and ask them to describe your personality, warts and all. And my friend Rob took the task very well, and he said that what he liked about me was that I would always celebrate his successes, which he felt was actually quite a rare thing amongst his peer group from when we were at Bristol University, and that stayed with me actually, because you always want your friends to do well. There can be a lot of competition, as we know. You're joining Scadden, we know how competitive it can be. And that's true of everyone that goes to university. But I think I want my friends to do absolute best they can do, and it's not just about his career success, but the fact that he's got his wife and his 2 kids, and happily living in Cardiff now as well, where I am too. So yeah, I think that's what he felt was great, is that I'd always back him, but also when he had problems, that I'd offer solutions and be helpful. So I'm lucky I've got good friends like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. In fact, I had a message this morning from someone a year below me saying she just got an OTC, and she was so happy because we were having conversations, and the one thing I said to her was, all I want is that more people don't pull the line off from them.
Exactly.
After they've kind of got that success, and instead I think the best that we can do is share how we got to where we are, and whether you're 1 step ahead or 10 steps ahead. So yeah, I love hearing that. Before we get to AS and talking all about your journey there and beyond, I want to take a couple of steps back. So can you tell us when you first sort of got interested in law and when you thought that the solicitor path might be one for you?
Yeah, I went to a school in a comprehensive in West Wales, a place called Aberera, where my first language was Welsh, and I loved history and English. And the natural progression from that was to go and study law. And for me, I loved being that kind of advisor, sort of harking back to what my friend Rob said about me as a friend. And I thought, having grown up in a family business, that I wanted to be someone that was advising support businesses on growth and on the legal aspects was the most obvious path at that point. And Bristol as a university really appealed to me, and you had a great course. There were all sorts of things you get involved with as well. And when you went to Bristol, you either got TC or you were a loser. Which was a bit of the dominant perspective at that time. Thankfully, things have changed, and lots of people studying law go and do all sorts of interesting things. Many among my peer group, whether they train to be a lawyer or something else, or go entirely different paths straight away. So I was caught up in the training, contract training, the rigor, the commerciality, all of that was on offer. So yeah, it was something that I really wanted.
And how easy would you say that journey was for you? I mean, like I think especially at Russell Group, like you say, I had the same thing in Exeter. It was very much, you got TC and then you got something, and if not, that was kind of what defined you. What challenges did you face, or was it quite easy for you to get to that point?
It was challenging.
Yeah.
I think you have a lot of very clever, driven people that want to join the profession. Yeah. The turning point, I think, for me was a year abroad in Hong Kong as part of my studies. I learned so much. So I came to university as a very young 18-year-old. I'm a July baby, so all of that was very new. Growing up in a village without a pub or a shop, and then going to a city like Bristol was a big deal. Yeah. And so then going and moving to Hong Kong, the most densely populated place on earth, was quite a change, but it was an amazing experience. I lived with local Hong Kong students in halls that had a bit of a Hogwarts style school system with initiation and a song, very different initiation to what we have over here. It was about the values of the hall and pledging your allegiance to Skyleaf Hall. Still have some friends from those days who were doing amazing things in orchestras and all sorts of creative pursuits, and it was just fantastic. Made some amazing friends, one of which is based in Tokyo. I went to see him last year after many years of tugging my arms going to see him. And I guess it broadened my horizons, gave me a chance to speak about something that I'd done that was different, adapted to a different environment, tough education in the sense that standards were high. Yeah. And when I came back, I had a great thing to talk about, interview, managed to do some work experience in Eversheds in Hong Kong as well, which was really insightful, working on M&A deals and IPOs. So that was a game changer. So when I came back, it meant I could get 2 offers and a training contract, which was great.
Yeah, amazing. And we talk about that coveted TC that everyone's waiting for, and then you sort of get there, and there's a lot of there's a lot of celebration around it, but it's also tough those 2 years. And equally, for some people, they know that that's their path, and for others, they may think, actually, I've worked really hard for this, but this may not be for me. I guess for you, what were your feelings throughout the TC, and did you think that you could see yourself in this profession the long term?
Yeah, Osborne Clark in Bristol primarily, but with some London work. I remember going past the shop this morning. We did a bit of work with Foresight, was a client at the time, and a big signing, and you had all of that sort of bravado around being in those environments. I had some really good supervising lawyers as well. And I think it was a good environment. I think I had really good fellow trainees, but it was never somewhere that I thought I could really be what I wanted to be. I think with some incredibly smart people in the pensions team who really were operating at a totally different level, which was great. And then energy environmental was also great, working on battery storage technology, contracts, things like that. But I knew my passions lay elsewhere. I got involved with a really brilliant initiative they did with local sixth form schools around improving public speaking and essentially raising their aspirations. And I got real fire for that, really enjoyed it. And obviously involved with reaching out to universities and helping the firm reach out to a bigger pool of talent than had been the case historically. And that's what kind of led me to thinking about wanting to do that in life after the law.
Yeah, and we were talking about it earlier before recording, but when a lot of people, and especially I think it's even more common now, but after qualification do tend to move elsewhere, whether that's not a profession or in-house. There's that narrative of, oh, they just couldn't hack it, or they just couldn't do it. For you, did you have that fear that people might view you that way, or were you really sure that actually this is what I want to do, and it's not because I can't do it, it's because you just have a different path?
I suppose that's my other superpower, is that I didn't. There are people's opinions that matter. Your own, really. You're accountable to you and your family and your friends.
Yeah.
I think there are some exceptional people in the profession for whom it is absolutely their vocation and what they should do, and that is fantastic. A lot of people think I was a bit crazy after all that time and effort against that point.
Yeah.
I had a lot of recruiters saying, you can go wherever you want in the Bristol market after training at OC. But for me, it was the right time to experiment and to try different things. And I knew that helping people get to that position and wanting to do it was a fantastic foundation for whatever they wanted to do in their life. And I'm grateful for that training and the investment the firm made in me, because it gave me a lot of commerciality, a lot of critical rigor, and I'm in touch with a lot of people, very good friends, one of which I did a road trip to Norway with him last summer as well. He has since left the firm as well, but has had a really cool in-house career since. Yeah. So he like me, would be grateful for the firm making that investment. And so, for me, I didn't stop for a second to worry about that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did it, because that's obviously where we had the chance to meet. And I think, even now, if anyone ever asks me about mentors and stuff, you're always on top of that list. Because I still remember, I think, as a first year, not really knowing anything about the profession, I think what AS offered was just so much mentorship and like a community of sorts. So talking a little bit about your journey with the foreign solicitors. When did you first come across it, and when did you decide that this is what I wanted to do next?
So I left the firm on qualification.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, why can't I try and make this a full-time? People have been approaching me for 2 years saying, how did you get in? How did you do it? They were great on paper, but they couldn't build that narrative and that edge to the rules of the game. And you can remember us telling you about when you were flying up the ranks of the commercial race competition. What I did was start going to law fairs all around the country, speaking to students, getting a sense of where the pain points were, how I could help with CV review, drop-in sessions at Bristol, all those things, and speak to firms as well. And they said, we heard of AS, and they were all telling me what you're doing, exactly what AS is doing. Got wind that Chris, founder, was going to be at an event in Bristol, and I knew the president of the Law Society at the Bristol campus at the time, so I managed to get into that event. And I think he thought I was one of the students when I spoke to him at the end. Told him what I was doing, and he said, you can step on board with us and join us. And after a lot of negotiation and bargaining back and forth about the role, as you know, Chris, it all came together, and I joined them in 2018. And so, it was a really amazing 7 years. Got to meet incredible people like you and others that happily still get in touch and want advice and support, and that have gone and done the things they want to do in their life and are excited about what comes next. It's a lot of doom and gloom in this country, unfortunately, but they have overcome all sorts of barriers and obstacles, and have, like you said before, not pulled up the ladder, want to help others access and have the same opportunities that they have had, and that's working really well. Things are challenging for diversity and inclusion in the profession and more broadly in society generally. But positively, that doesn't prevent them doing all the great work they're doing to help others continue to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess from the perspective of, going from somewhere like Osborne Park, it's an organisation which, it's like a well-oiled machine, it's been running for a long time. You're kind of, as a trainee, yes, you're important, but really, you're kind of doing the work that like the partners are bringing in or the associates are bringing in. I guess going from that to AS, which obviously the 7 years you were there, it really, really grew, but you kind of were joining somewhat of a startup and seeing that growth. I guess what skills did you really build in that time, and how different was it to what you were doing first?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think you're right. Startup environment couldn't be further removed from what it's like in a law firm. Yeah. But I think I could go in a room and talk about what we were doing, and people would be immediately engaged and immediately interested in what we're doing, how they could get involved. So, for example, I managed to get Facebook on board because they wanted to work on a mentoring scheme with us. And then Amazon followed, and then Revolut followed, and suddenly it was just finding a way to deliver something that was really meaningful for the mentors, but had the impact. All these organizations want to know is, will this have results? We're all for the mission, but if all we're doing is a scheme that's going to instill confidence, not much difference, then it's not for us. And thankfully, the success rate, first time we ran the Facebook scheme, we had mentees joining every levels, PCLP, and ovary immediately off the back of that experience. So that gave a lot of confidence to the market and the buyers that it was worthwhile working with us. So the key thing was when you're in a small organization, you've got to be strong with your weakest components. So luckily we did a really good job getting the right people into the business. Coaches were fantastic in building confidence of our members. You grew to 100,000 and managing the expectations and supporting as many of them as we could, whilst ensuring that the employers that were funding us so that the students could get support for free were finding that they felt that they were making the impact that they wanted and supporting us in our mission. So that was what's great about the model. We were a talent development platform, we were about education. So that meant that it wasn't a model that relied on how many people they were hiring. It was as long as we're making the impact of the profession, and that's what we're motivated by. And you're joining Skadden, who came on board about halfway through my time at AS and has been one of the most impactful sponsors involved in the organisation by virtue of the personal winners competition and the sheer number of associates that are working there now and really thriving, which has been really fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the one thing with, a lot of work experience mentoring schemes is that there are definitely a lot out there now, and there's more so coming kind of each year. But I think sometimes the issue that I've heard from students is like there can be certain schemes or experiences where it's branded as a mentoring experience, but really you don't get that much face time with the firm, or you're kind of there and it might be more online than in person. And so there's that kind of quality versus quantity aspect as well. And as from the ACES perspective, you want to be associated with these employers, and you also want to ensure that ultimately the students have a good time. So I guess, did you ever face any challenges there, and how did you ensure that the end result was what you kind of started out with?
Yeah, for us it was very much about meaningful, tangible experience they can take forward, where it's not a name dropping exercise. It's I worked with this mentor, or I worked with this revenue mentor, this is what I learned, and actually this is why this makes me a good trainee now. So with Meta, for example, to maximise access across the UK and Ireland, so we had a lot of Dublin university students getting involved as well, because the challenges in Dublin are more extreme than they are in this country. They would be flown in by Meta and A&O that were partnering with us as well, now A&O Sherman, to go to the office and experiment with the Ray-Ban glasses and all of the VR technology, as well as having really meaningful workshops and experiences. And they'd have some time in the US as well, so they'd be joining calls that were going on in San Francisco and elsewhere in the States, and they would be able to take that tangible stuff forward. And we had some Irish students that have now gone on to HSF and other places and have had that experience and other things that we're bringing to the table. So that was very important to us. Since I've left AS, I know Revolut was a brand new office in Canary Wharf, which the mentees were able to go to this year as well, which is, I was looking on with envy because I remember the days of going there. So all of these things, they're driven by the passion of the volunteers within those organisations. They're not paid to do this. They find the time alongside the side of their desk to make it happen because their passion. And so that means the combination of our knowledge and expertise combined with their drive to make things happen, providing the best possible experience. Feedback is so important. So always building off what the mentees were telling us to make it something that was really meaningful and impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, talking about coming back to you and your journey after 7 years and then being at AS for so long, I guess you decided to make another career change, and I think I remember seeing your post and just being like, oh my goodness, because it felt like you kind of just been there forever, and you were kind of there at every event and that sort of thing. So I'm sure that must have been a really kind of difficult time for you as well, navigating what you wanted to do next. I guess, how did you know it was time, and what was the next challenge that was meeting?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the 100-year life. So I'm not as crazy as Brian Johnson over in the States, who's done the Netflix documentary about longevity, but people are living longer, and with the advances of technology and AI, I'm surprised it's taken us this long to drop that name in. But everyone's got to reskill and adapt. And the 7 years at AS were fantastic, particularly in the last sort of 12 months of my time there. Was able to take the leading role in operationally running everything that we were doing with firms and students, which was a brilliant experience, and was absolutely supported and encouraged and given an amazing chance to take that responsibility, which was great. And I knew that there was an opportunity to work with a younger demographic and an older demographic. So with AS, it's 18 to 25 broadly.
Yeah.
I know that there's more impact that can be had 11 to 18.
Yeah.
Equally, I know that people in their 40s are now finding that they're having to make quite a big pivot, haven't been in the market for a long time, and that they are experiencing a lot of challenges and big financial pressures with family and mortgages and other things. So an opportunity with a platform called Sunny Future came up. So they are helping 40 plus who now are finding they're either become very expensive and with the rate of redundancies happening, particularly big tech, many other areas, they are now having to pivot and retrade and find themselves having to totally rediscover a new working identity. And that is quite a complex process. There are others that have got to the top of the corporate and thought, you know, there's something else I want to do now, launch their ventures. What the platform does is it helps people to essentially retrain, be linked up with existing successful entrepreneurs if they want to launch an art gallery, is a request we had recently, or someone wants to go and launch an AI product that will enhance conferences in a way that makes it a lot more appealing and a lot more engaging for those that attend. So what myself and a guy called Nick do is actually help them identify this is the sort of sprint coaching program that you need in order to make that dream a reality, or to help you pivot in this tough jobs market. LinkedIn narrative, all of those things, with a view to them going on and doing something a lot more meaningful and impactful for them. At the other end of things, I know that technology can have a massive impact for young people in this country. So Imova, which is a company I recently joined, alongside Sunny Future. So my approach now is kind of a portfolio type arrangement where you work a set number of days per week with set milestones for each organization, which is a big steep learning curve, but really fun. And so you're essentially selling your time in a way that gives you flexibility to pursue projects that are most interesting to you. So I wanted to give that a try. And it's been, I left AS in July, so now we're in February. And just this morning, I was doing a pitch of a movement to a group of year 9s and year 10s at Canary Wharf College. And the talent and the ability in that room kind of blew me away. They sort of tore that apart, which was great feedback for us as the first big school we're rolling out to. And so, similar to my experience at AS, you work with bright, driven, diverse young people. It's one of the most energizing things I think you can do. So it's really just building on what I learned at AS and applying it in different contexts, which has been really, really fun.
Yeah, that's incredible. I guess that's two different pathways. So I guess looking at the 40s, and like you mentioned, I think I've seen a lot of people, you know, sort of when that's like my dad's colleagues or like that sort of generation, especially definitely in that market of like they've worked for a long time and now suddenly they've gone through the change of probably going from paper to computers, and now it's like kind of the next stage. So for them and their working lives, there's definitely lots of changes. I guess someone listening, especially our audience being sort of either aspiring lawyers or professionals or people who've just started, and them thinking that that's probably going to be us in 20 years' time. I guess from your perspective, how could they sort of future-proof themselves so that they're not in that position where they suddenly have to reskill and actually they're already kind of reskilling or doing that gradually alongside their current jobs?
Yeah, I think it's relationships. So I know you're particularly effective at this, otherwise you wouldn't have 100 episodes to them already. And it's really about continuing to build those affinities. They call it weak ties. I prefer sort of loose ties, the idea that they're not your immediate friends or family, but they're people that you cross paths with in your life. Whether to school, university, people you met at the Commercial competition, they may not be in your immediate industry, but who are doing interesting things. So at each stage of my pivot, when I joined AS, Facebook was through someone I used to work with at Osborne Park, and then Revolut was someone that was through another connection, and then it was really, and I do some work at the University of Bristol as well on the alumni board. And things have flown from that. It's given me an insight to how an organisation with 200,000 alumni operates. So having as many interests as you can, but allocating enough time to feel it's worthwhile for you and for them is really, really valuable. And of course, people say experiment with AI. It's not necessarily the most useful or practical advice, but the more you can try and build it into first your personal life, and then whatever is available to your workplace is going to be beneficial. There are all sorts of estimates, claims about how it's revolutionising the way people work. We're at the very early stage, but there's certainly promising insights about what could change very quickly.
Yeah.
So I think it's maintaining strong relationships. I think it's very much LinkedIn. People love it, they hate it, but you can write about things that you're interested in and you're passionate about. Even just, I've been going to entrepreneur meetups for years, and I've just re-engaged with them now, looking to launch a meetup in Cardiff later this year, because you meet people that are so passionate what they do. Some have failed, some have succeeded, some have had all sorts of trials and tribulations, but you get so much energy from those people when they're so passionate about what they're trying to launch in a tough environment, that you learn a lot from those people, which is great. So I would just say, continue to be interested in things, continue to like what you're doing, really have a side hustle that can lead to something tangible that you enjoy. You're not doing just for the sake of having a profile. People want to talk to you and find out more what you're doing. And so that's what I think has fueled me through peaks and troughs, through adjustments, through, people choose law because they will get a lot of training, support, security, status. All of those things are great. It's just your capacity to take risks and be prepared for changes. And I think I've had to adjust when I left law, and again when I left AS. So your ability to manage lifestyle is also really important. And so when you're in a good position, if you've got a good sense, so I'm sort of able to save around 30% of my income for a good period while I was at AS for the last 2 or 3 years, which then helps you through the leaner periods where you're rebuilding, you're restarting again. And then that puts you in the best position then to not just take the first thing that comes along because you're wanting to pay mortgage, or it might be. So I think that has also been very instrumental in my ability to pursue things that I'm interested in.
Yeah, for sure. I think that piece about, like you say, maintaining good relationships, and then, that not just maintaining relationships with people, but then equally being up to date with what they're doing and what their interests are, and where those align, and that's so important. And not doing it just for a transaction perspective, but also maintaining, kind of beyond that as well. And I think, LinkedIn is a double-edged sword, but I think it can be used for good, for sure. And I guess on the other side of that spectrum, you've also mentioned you work with people who are under that, kind of under 18, they're still at school. And there's been a lot of conversation, in the media about AI and how that affects schools and how that affects our education system. Whilst there's also a crisis of schools struggling with resources, and on the other hand, there's AI and there's, all this new kind of tech that students can get involved with. I guess what's for you with, Moving or other ventures, sort of, what's the hope that how students can sort of use AI and use these tools and be encouraged to do so in schools, whilst the realistic perspective of not all schools, like a comprehensive, may be able to do that?
So I'll talk a bit more about the product with the moment, which gives you a bit of an insight into how that application of AI, we think, will really help students. So when we think about our time at school, often careers leads, officers are trying to support hundreds of students. It can be very difficult for them to provide immediately the environment they want to. From a student perspective, you're often heavily influenced by 3 things, which would be your economic capital, cultural capital, social capital, which are the amount of resources parents have, who they're friends with, and then equally what you're used to experiencing, whether that be some of the things you might find in law, along the lines of skiing, fine wine, and holidays, or internships at UNICEF, wherever it might be. So what the app is trying to do is give students the chance to explore 6,500 different career avenues that's based on their DNA profile. And how we collate that is that we give them the opportunity to share what it is they really enjoy doing, whether that's esports, whether that's VR, or it's music, or it's football, any number of video editing, social media, whatever it might be, combined with what subjects they enjoy, what type of person they are. If they take a series of quizzes around their personality type or their emotional intelligence. What Aristotle does is that AI then analyzes what they've provided as the platform, provides them with a list of different potential career avenues they may want to pursue, and how they go about achieving it. So they will say, these are the sort of subjects I want to think about GCSE, which by year 9s I saw this morning. It then allows the teacher to help support them in whatever path they want to pursue. Parents have an understanding of what the jobs market is going to look like in 5 or 10 years' time, so that the app is fed with live data around labour market demand, what's likely to be needed down the line. Employers on the platform where students opt in then have the opportunity to present them with certain apprenticeship opportunities and other things based on regional where they're based around the country. And so you're finding that the pupil for the first time is able to have a really insightful projection of what they might pursue in their life and what they need to do and study to get there. There's an e-learning component to the platform as well, so they can study additional subjects alongside what the school provides to help them on that journey to fulfilling their potential. We are with 100,000 pupils at the moment in the UK, and we're also established Bahrain, UAE, and Saudi. And so what we want to do is to make them empowered for the fourth industrial revolution, which is the big change that's coming in jobs that will be created by AI, rather than this negative doom and gloom around what jobs will be removed by virtue of this technology. So that's where I see AI being really influential. It's really about personalised journeys, because when you think about that famous diagram of measuring people's ability when one is one type of animal or a fish, you'll be judging a fish's ability to climb a tree. I don't think you're aware of that. Particular demonstration of why there are shortcomings to the syllabus. What this intends to do is give a personalised path to every student around what they might want to do. And I think that can be applied across the spectrum of educational needs in a way that hasn't been possible historically. I know a number of teachers find it very useful for preparation, and it's giving them more time to do the things that they want to do with the pupils as well. And please say the teacher feedback has been excellent for the product so far.
Yeah, that's amazing, especially because I think, you know, from the parent generation, or even teachers who may have their own kids around the same age, it's like they knew about a certain number of jobs, and actually the amount of jobs out there now is so much wider, and they may think a job is insecure and one job is, you know, the more traditional careers are more secure, but actually you find that AI is changing all of that. And so it's really about, like you say, personalizing it to your interests, and therefore also being to constantly reskill and readapt. I guess from the perspective of, you know, you mentioned doom and gloom earlier, there's that side to AI. You mentioned you speaking to kind of airlines today, what do you think, what were you sensing sort of was the opinion? Were they excited about AI, or were they a little bit scared? And if you don't mind sharing some of the feedback that you got.
Yeah, definitely. When I asked who's using AI every day, every hand in the room went up, so they're engaging with it.
Yeah.
When I asked what you're using it for, homework, I said to support you, I'm not doing it for you. They're like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think for that generation, they will be amazed that their parents and grandparents only ever did one thing for their career in their lives. I think that would be a bizarre concept in 5 to 10 years, where they'll say, what, did one thing the whole time?
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a thing in the past, and that's already happening. Their feedback was they loved the salary range, but they were like, okay, so could you break it down in terms of entry level versus mid level versus senior? They wanted to know the work-life balance here, what the demands that might be for working at something like law, banking, wherever it might be. They wanted to know about international opportunities, and with a view hopefully to going, experiencing, and then coming back, which is what opportunity you will have at Scadden, which is really exciting. I know a number of our alumni have gone and lived in Hong Kong and fantastic places, and then come back, which is great, in the US, etc. So, they wanted more, which was great. And they wanted more detail and more insights, because we'd actually adjusted the platform to be more focused on minimum level detail based on what the school wanted. So for the kids to come back and say we have a bit more, it's fantastic to get both perspectives. So they were just waiting to sign up, and they were getting a link to their information. And what's positive is that in early testing, their overall attainment actually goes up based on them having a vision and a path and understanding why maths is relevant to them becoming an engineer for EDF Energy or whatever it might be. So that's what we're trying to achieve here, is to help them have an agency in their life, and then have the ability to navigate the world in a way that gets them the life that they want.
And you mentioned work-life balance, and I think that is another one of those, you know, heated debates out there, especially about the current generation, that, you know, that they kind of want too much life and perhaps not enough work, and the generation before was all about hustling and you know, kind of grinding and that sort of thing. Having interacted with so many young professionals and seeing people, what is your sense of the difference between work-life balance versus, they just want balance in general? Like, where does that stand?
Yeah, I think anyone suggests Gen Z they work very hard to meet you because you don't really stop between projects and studies and everything else. I think it's very positive that people are focused on wanting to have a version of life that they can be consistent with.
Absolutely.
I think what was great about my time at ES is that while I was working at firms like Skadden or Meta or Revolut is that they got a lot of meaning and purpose from being involved in the schemes because they wanted to help other people access those sorts of opportunities. Some of the Revolut personnel we were dealing with had got shares in the Revolut early and, were building a company and were very much focused on being part of that journey. And I think when you're thinking about work-life balance, they would gladly share with you that in-house isn't just about having a bit more balance, that it can be, that this year famously is a very demanding individual, which is probably a testament to their growth. But I think it's about finding what's important to you.
Yeah.
I know when you would have been considering the firms that are queuing up to have you train at their firm, that you are making decisions around what's important to you and that you understand, yes, there will be times when it is very demanding, but I know that it will give me the training, fulfillment and opportunities down the line that I can go and do lots of other things. And I think people can sometimes be caught in this sort of all or nothing mindset, which is right, I made a decision to train here, that's my linear path and that's what I'm committed to, when actually there's lots of scope to go and try, experiment and do new things. So I think it's positive that people are actively thinking about what balance they want.
Yeah.
But that people like you can understand that if this is a path that I want to pursue, yes, it's going to be demanding, but I always have choice. And that's what was always important to me, yes, which I did have questions from many peers who come to university and me saying, how do you feel about the fact that you know how demanding it is that you're encouraging people to go into that? So I want to give people choices. I'm going to have a lot more choices on training than they would have had otherwise. And I always remind alumni about that. Happily, a number of them are still doing really well, private practice. A few of them have moved to Dubai, hoping they'll come back. But, that's the sort of opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise have had. So that's what I continue to focus on is, yes, it'll be tough. Here are the coping mechanisms that will enable you to stick to it, enjoy it, as well as the option you have if you ever want to try something else.
Yeah. And I guess for those, we spoke about sort of deciding and getting into the profession. I think from a more realistic perspective as well, if you're currently in a position where, say, you're an NQ or you've just graduated and you've been, say, part of a grad scheme, and now you're thinking, okay, what are my options? And I think there's a lot of people online who are like, I just jumped ship and I just started a company or sort of thing. And that's not realistic for everyone. Financially, they may not really know whether they can sustain themselves. They may think, what if I regret it in a year's time or so? I guess having sort of, had these career transitions, what are some tips you can give to someone who's unhappy with their current role, but is, kind of wanting to have a bit of a safety net and, to know what to do before they decide to ultimately leave?
Yeah, so what's been fantastic in the legal profession is there is a more recognition of the flexibility and the ability to work part-time. So individual called Michael Kest, who is another CAC legend like myself, and came through to a final a few years ago, trained at Linklaters, and has now gone on to launch his own AI company. But Linklaters were so keen to keep him, they said, well, we'll do 3 days a week, so he can work that at the same time. So that's how he's been able to navigate it, which is demanding at links, but equally he's able to pursue that passion and that objective, and that's worked really well for him. Similar to what I said earlier, really, I think the challenge with law is you work really hard, you get a lot from it, but the decompression aspect is quite important to people. And what I mean by that is your lifestyle can lean towards the finer things in life. As you can imagine, you're earning very well, you're making the most of your time when you're not having to be in the office, whether that is holidays or everything London has to offer. And I think the more you can control your outgoings and have a fixed idea of what's important to you. Of course, there are core costs that are involved, like living in London, obviously. But the more you can have that sort of discipline and that good personal finance, you'd be amazed how many exceptional lawyers and bankers and accountants have quite a limited sense of financial personal investment. And that's often influenced by parents. If your parents didn't invest, then it's not something that occurs to you naturally.
Yes.
So the more you can understand how that world works. What you find is a bit of a trend now. People have dived into crypto, and it's also been a bit of a bloodbath of late. But the more you can explore wealth creation, then the more you will have the ability and freedom to pursue new things down the line, which is important. And positively, a number of our alumni have done that. Have worked exceptionally hard in the TC and as associates to save a lot of money to launch their own portfolio properties in regional parts of the UK, or they've been able to get really savvy with investing, and that's given them a good sort of tax-free ISA as a pot that you can access now, like the pension, although you should make use of your pension provision as well. All of that stuff gives you freedom. Whereas what I see all too often is that when you're in an environment where people are spending lots of money, often to the benefit of the children from private school, wherever it might be, that you become somewhat trapped because you need to earn a certain amount and there's no scope for having a slight adjustment for a brief amount of time.
Yeah.
So those are the sorts of things you've got to decide, which is what is the best interest of me, my family, and the life that we want, versus the ability to go and pursue new projects. I do have peers that wish they could sort of take this sort of risk. They have wonderful families and do really well as parents. That's the sort of thing that the band mum and dad can be quite influential in terms of people's ability to have that. But it's not to say that it isn't possible. So yeah, the more you can prevent lifestyle creep, as we call it, then the better position you'll be.
Yeah, it's the golden handcuffs, and then you get used to that lifestyle, and then So I think at that point, being very sensible is definitely important. And as a bit of a final question, you spoke about new projects. So I guess for you, what are the next? What's the plan for what you would want to be doing? Let's say maybe the year. I know that you probably have a career transition like the next 5 years. So I guess at the moment, sort of what are your professional goals and what are you looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So the portfolio is really a 3-month stage of where I've been able to establish different streams of work. I've actually spent some time with my family business doing a rebrand as well, which has been a lot of fun for a tractor business, which is great, working with my own brother, which has been interesting. A lot of fun. And so for me, Sunny Future and Imovum, I think I've got really exciting trajectories. Imovum, I think, is somewhere we can grow really quickly. I've taken equity in the company as well, so I'm very invested in where we're going, which is very motivating. And so my focus is growth, head of growth for the UK, primarily in England, Wales and Scotland. However, there probably will be scope to, I'm doing some work in the Middle East as well. So I don't think I'll be moving there, but if I can start to help some of those schools on their trajectory to where they want to help the people, and that's something that's quite exciting as well. So I would say that to the degree I can continue to do that. I'm based in Cardiff now. I think there's huge talent in Cardiff. Met a lot of really cool founders, and if I can sort of bring those people together, there's a lot of mates that are vibe coding some really cool applications like childcare allocation around nurseries in the UK, which is getting a lot of traction. Then I think it's an exciting space for sure. And I'm looking forward to continuing to progress those projects next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, sounds incredible. And on that note, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Harri. I think I've always admired your ability to be able to, always look out for people who are where they're starting the profession, wherever they are. And also, more importantly, I think I've learned how to maintain relationships, watching you maintain that with, whether that's AS alumni, other people, whether that's people from, working in law in Oswald Park. So thank you so much for coming and also for being supportive at the times. And I really appreciate the time you taking out today.
That is all my pleasure.
On that note, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and a massive shout out to Harri for coming on Commerce Meets Law. Since the commercial awareness competition back in 2022 and when I actually first started at university, Harri has been one of my biggest mentors and role models. Even, inspiration behind why I started this podcast, because I've always seen Harri giving so much of his time, his energy, his support, his experience to aspiring professionals, not just within law, but also outside of it, and really helping people achieve their dreams, really embodying that idea of, not kind of pulling up the ladder, which is something we discussed during the episode as well. But I think that that's such an important message. And so much of what I've learned about why it's so important to support our fellow legal professionals is from Harri. So being able to have him on this podcast was just such a dream come true, and truly, truly means so much to me. His journey, I think, is the definition of combining success and purpose, which is really what most of us are seeking, and which is hopefully what you also get from each of these episodes on Commerce Meets Law. If you did enjoy this episode, please do let me know by emailing commercemeetslaw@gmail.com or with a DM on Instagram at Commerce Meets Law. And you can also reach out to us on our website, which will be linked down in the description. Finally, for access to my content, do check out the Commerce Meets Law YouTube channel and our TikTok. For now, take care, goodbye, and I'll see you very soon on the next episode.